Good morning, Phil. Welcome to the Inner Pause. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Amy. How are you doing?
I am great. Yeah.
Good.
And I wanted to share that this space are for leaders, professionals, and humans navigating complexity, where we slow down just enough, right, to listen inward. So, here
Yeah.
at Mindful Leadership, we start with self leadership, with
Mhm.
awareness, compassion, and the courage to meet what's here.
Awesome.
So, good morning, Dr. Phil. Thank you for being here. And
Good
I'd love
morning.
to explore what it truly means to lead with presence rather than pressure. So, I love that we start with a little pause.
Yes,
Mm,
definitely.
Great. Let's take in a few in breath and a long out breath.
Wonderful.
Great. And welcome back. Right?
Mhm.
It does make a difference, isn't it? That short pause, then you're more calm in some way.
Oh, completely, completely. Even some of my clients have mentioned that same thing. They said, let's start with the pause because that makes such a difference for us. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, completely, completely reset the tone,
Correct, correct.
which is what we're all about.
Yeah, I'm so glad that I have you today because we're gonna dive straight into the sixth principle. But before
Yes.
that, I would like to just bring back what we have touched on. We've explored the four pillars, how
Hmm.
mindful leadership shows as a foundational application. And in our last conversations, we also touched on the essence of it through the heart framework.
Yes, we did.
And today we are going to move into something more practical. Am I right? Right? The sixth,
Something more
prac-
practical, something more operational.
yeah, something more practical, more operational, and how leaders can actually take this work and live by the days, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, so
Complete.
before we go into each of them, how do you see these principles supporting leaders in real life, everyday situations?
Yeah, the six principles I originally came up with because they created this internal framework, this inner way of leaders um, using them, right,
Mm-hmm.
operationally,
Mm-hmm.
to practice mindful leadership more. They set kind of a holistic pathway forward for leaders to kind of illuminate their ways as they move their way to practicing mindful leadership more. And as we've talked about in the past, uh, you have to lead from the inside out. And so rather than focusing on external behaviors, I focused on internal behaviors. And
Mm.
that's where I came up with the six principles.
I see. That is so beautiful, right? Because we can only, whatever we have, it's internal. So let's say, for example, when we think that we're angry at a colleague, but we are really
Mhm.
angry ourselves inside,
Yes,
how I
yes.
felt. Wow.
Yeah, you need to take time to realize that, right?
Yeah, yeah. And that's
Yeah.
perfect for leaders, today.
Yes,
So
that's good.
before we go into deeper into each of those principles,
Mhm.
could you walk us through step by step, just at a high level, so listeners have a clear sense of the full landscape of the six practices? Let's start
Yeah,
with
I'd
the
be happy
first
to.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's start with the first one. So the first of my six principles is interoception,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And interoception is really noticing what's happening inside of you, noticing what's happening in your heart, your emotions, your breath, your tension or anxiety. Um, and noticing that in the beginning helps you to respond and
mm.
leads you into a mindful presence. So that's why interoception is like the foundational principle that I start with. Secondly, is the practice of embodiment. Now,
Okay.
embodiment is about how you show up. It's your true nature. It's your tone of voice. It's your um, posture, your energy. Those things make a difference to those people you're with in the meeting, right? And so you're surrounding yourself with, and so embodiment is as important. And as we go into the third one of being emotionally balanced, I think we both agree that
Yeah.
finding a balance in our emotions is a critical step to move forward or to help us be a more mindful leader, right? Um,
Less reactive.
the fourth practice, cognitive awareness,
Mhm,
means we're noticing our internal dialogue. We're noticing our
mm,
thoughts, but we're not acting upon them. We're stepping back to notice them before we pause, right?
mm.
We're taking time in our mind to think about what are those internal things going on in there, um, and what makes sense, the most sense to talk about or to take action on. So
This
that's
resonate
that's
with
a
me. This
cognitive
really resonate
awareness.
with me a lot. Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's such an important one to realize, right? That
Yeah. Yeah.
all those things going on in my head may not be really what I need, right? Or there's only one of them that will stand out that is most important, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, the fifth one is attentional control,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I bring this one up because it's the ability to stay focused on what we're doing in the moment and really focus on what matters most.
Mm.
So attentional control is, hey, let's stay focused on, this subject that we're on right now because it seems like a good pathway forward for all of us, right? So attentional control. And of course, the last one is value alignment. And we all want to stay true to our values as we lead. And as a mindful leader, it's important to stay true to those values because that's what matters most. And that is our intention that we put forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I may additionally add that it also um, helps build teams, right? And so teams notice when your values are aligned and when they're not. And it's the most critical ingredient to developing trust in a team.
Mm-hmm.
So having your values aligned is important. So as you can see, all six of those come together to build upon an internal inner framework that helps build that foundation of mindful leadership.
Yeah, I do want to ask you something a little deeper here. The interoception that you mentioned,
Yes.
awareness of the
Mhm.
landscape,
Yeah.
the connective awareness that you mentioned, because it seems to me they are quite close. How do you really differentiate that?
The difference between interception and awareness.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think interception is taking time to not only become aware, but then react
Ah, okay.
on
I see
the
where
on what was most important and what's
mm,
most aware, right?
yeah.
So you notice everything's that you're feeling, but you don't necessarily act. And I think that you have to take that action as part of interoception to show you're aware of what you're doing as a mindful leader. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes. And I mentioned just now that this connective awareness really resonate with me because it's
Hmm.
like we're seeing the thoughts clearly. And in most leadership that I work with, including
Hmm.
myself, there's this subtle self-judgment. Like, I am not.
Yes. I'm
So
really.
I do want to bring this point because it's really important. I see that in many leaders. A lot of
Mhm.
leaders thrived. On the outside, they are very strong, very capable, but inside, something it's happening. When the
Yes.
deadline are not met or something happened, there's some roadblocks in a project here and there. The self blame comes, right? That include myself many years ago. Until I
Hmm.
really practiced it, and sometimes it does surface again, but with the
Yes.
practice, we are aware that, hey, this is surfacing,
Yes,
and that's the
yes.
beauty of it.
I'm so glad you brought that up because um being not judgmental about what you're feeling and what's going on inside you is such a critical part of mindful leadership, right?
Yeah.
It makes all the difference because you don't want to judge those thoughts, you just want to identify them.
Mm, exactly. And that brings me to the third question I would really like to ask you. We understand that most leaders know the importance of being present, right? I mean, social media, the world is sharing how mindful leader is supposed to be and things like that. But in
Hmm.
real life, many do struggle to sustain it, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, so true, so true.
How do your six practices help bridge that gap, I would say, from knowing, right? I know that I need to be mindful, right? And actually living this mindful leadership.
I love that question. Thank you very much for asking it. It's so important to be able to understand that gap and why it exists, right? Um, I see the six principles as a developmental process, right? And we can talk more about that in upcoming questions and thoughts, but I think the gap exists, like you talked about, because internally isn't the same as what you act externally, right?
Always.
So what you're feeling inside isn't coming out the way you want, right?
Mm,
And so it becomes more difficult under pressure to be able to maintain that mindfulness as you move forward. And the six practices, I think, make these things more actionable because someone can say, "Oh, wait, I need to be more aware of my presence. I need to be more aware of this thought. I need to be more aware of maybe taking a pause."
mm,
And that's where, through the awareness of practicing the six practices, you can tighten that gap
mm,
between practice and action, or between thought and action, right?
yeah.
And I think it's a developmental skill. I don't think mindfulness is something we just all of a sudden obviously create in our heads, and then we go, "Oh wow, I'm going to be mindful now from today moving forward," right? It's a developmental process, and so that's what I think the six principles do is
Mm,
they give you those developmental tools
mm-hmm,
to bridge that gap more often
mm, mm,
so that your thoughts become your actions
mm-hmm.
and not your thoughts become reacting.
Yeah, this is so true. When you explain, I'm processing it, and it
Mhm.
seems like it is my own practice, right? At
Mhm.
first, the practice is like if I were to draw a graph, it's gonna go down this way, and then
Uh-huh.
slowly the gap is shorter, and then it'll go
Mhm.
like a straight line, maybe sometimes, you know?
I love that
Yeah,
graphic. That's
yeah.
so
So
powerful.
it
That's
feels
such a
that
powerful graphic.
way, right? Before it's like
That's,
it can go this way and then it
Yes.
slowly shorten that gap. That,
Usually. Yeah.
yeah. Wow, this is really important for the audience here because, again, mindfulness is a practice and it is not like a skill or a strategy that you can use or something. Yeah, it does take practice for the
Yes.
body, to pick up. And I love that you explained what Viktor Frankl explained, the
Hmm.
gap. It's
Hmm.
like between a stimulus and a response, there's a gap. And
Yes.
in that gap, where the freedom lies and the freedom of our choice, we can choose how to respond instead of react.
I love that. I love that because that in that gap you do have complete choice, right?
Complete
Um,
freedom.
Complete freedom to not judge and just choose what you're going to do next and take what action you'll take. I think that's beautiful. I think it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
that's beautiful to mention it as well. For the
Hmm.
leaders to understand that, hey, we do have a choice. Because I've met with many leaders, they
Hmm.
always come with this habitual mindset that no, we don't have
Hmm.
a choice. It has to be this way, right?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Many people think that, yeah.
So
But
in my experience,
yes.
um, mindfulness broadened this perspective for me to be able to see things, from
Uh-huh.
a bigger horizon, or maybe a 360-degree views rather than this tunnel vision here.
Narrow vision. Yeah. For
Mm,
me, I think when I developed the six principles, I really realized that there, like you said, there's the whole scope of the spectrum out there of
mm,
opportunities and choices we have to make, right?
mm-hmm.
And the different principles can help us with different things, you know.
True.
And so that's why it's important to have all six of them because we will use one or two or
Mm-hmm.
even three at different points,
Ah,
um, and different times, maybe even in the same moment, right? Um,
that
so-
leads me to the next question. I love that. Hang in, right? If we take all these six principles, right? Practices,
uh-huh.
sorry, that you
Yeah.
mentioned, like it can come this one or this one, or it can
Mhm.
come together, right? Is there
Yes.
one that you see as an entry point, like especially for leaders who are new to this work?
Yeah. Wonderful question. I love that one. Um, there is one that I think is most important, and that one is interoception.
Mm,
Um, And that is because it is the one that creates our awareness of where we're at and what
mm,
we're thinking and what we're doing at the moment. Bringing that awareness of what's happening inside of us is the first step that
mm,
we need to take before any of the other six principles can be used. We have to be aware where we're at,
mm-hmm,
and then we can start to implement other principles into our decision-making process
mm.
mindfully to help us. And so interoception is definitely the entry point.
Thank you so much.
Definitely.
And this is so, so important. As I always say, mindfulness is a practice of awareness. And that first principle is so important that we can be aware of our current state of mind, maybe our current physical state,
Mhm.
current state of mind, our current state of emotions, so
Yes,
that we can have a choice to choose
yes,
what we're going to do
yes,
later,
yes.
right?
If we're not aware, we're all over the place.
We're all over the place, right?
Our emotions are, we're making reactive decisions
Yeah,
and our emotions are running
we
wild.
can.
And once you get aware of that, you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh,
Mm-hmm.
wait,
Yep.
you can put it in perspective, stop,
Yeah.
pause,
Yeah.
move on your way.
especially in today's society, we get triggered very fast, you know.
Yes. Oh, we do.
Oh,
We
I see
do.
that in public places as well, Dr. Phil, right? We get triggered. Human beings have very short attention span. There's so much expectation, so much control. So all these things come. And I would love that if you could explain, do you see them in sequential, like the six practices, or
Mhm.
something that leaders could build over time? Or,
Mhm.
you know, like you say, are they more fluid depending on the moment?
Yeah, I love that question because it really can be, it's not purely linear.
Okay.
The six practices are not purely linear. There is fluidity to them,
Mm-hmm.
and they sometimes happen synchronously and together. And so they can be fluid, but also sequential and work together because, like I said earlier, becoming a mindful leader is a developmental process, right? So as you use these six principles in different situations, it leads you to create greater emotional regulation and emotional stability. And like your example earlier of the graph going up and down,
Mm-hmm.
as you practice developmentally the fluidity or the linear structure of the six principles, what happens is the curve starts to get smaller, right?
Yeah.
And we are developing ourselves to use these principles better and become more mindful leaders through a process of sometimes fluidity and sometimes being linear. So I
I
think both things happen sometimes right at the same moment, even. And we
yeah,
have to, and then when we have that choice.
that's life. That's exactly what it is, right? Oh, this
Yeah.
is really, really, really beautiful. Um, the next question I have for you
Uh-huh.
is in those high pressure environments, I mean, we both coach leaders, we were in the high pressure environments, right? It is
Yes.
always easy to say that, easy to practice, you know, for the practice to disappear. Like when it
Yeah.
comes and then, you know, the habitual patterns happened, right?
Right.
How do you see leaders stay connected to these practices when they're triggered, overwhelmed, or moving very fast?
Well, the first thing I think leaders have to do is like practice mindful leadership, right? They have to understand the principles and practices of mindful leadership so that they can say, "Oh, this is a high pressure situation. I let me just take a pause right here," right?
Hmm.
Um, because things do start to disappear under pressure always. So, but we have to bring it back.
Mm.
It's like meditation, right? It's like you know how it is sitting on your pillow meditating, right? And your mind's wandering, and all of a sudden you go, "Oh,
Come
time to
back.
bring it back, time to bring it back," right?
Yes.
It's similar in that respect to meditation. Mindfulness is similar. Those high pressure situations are, oh, wait, I'm in this high pressure situation. Wait, I need to bring it back to a pause
Mm.
and I need to breathe and
Mm.
reconnect with those around me so that I can make a better decision.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I think this is the biggest gap in today's leader, being able to take that pause, right? To
Yes, yes.
create that space so that we
Mhm.
can respond better,
Yes.
more informed, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And for me, sometimes I feel that allowing ourselves to take that pause, that was really difficult.
That's a good point because we
Yeah.
allowing ourselves to do that is really important,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm,
just especially if we're in a higher pressure meeting and
mm,
just saying, oh wait, pause a moment, slow down.
mm.
Okay,
Yeah. And
now
then all the eyes will be on you and expecting you to say something.
exactly. And if all the eyes are looking at you, you can go, oh,
Oops.
time to be silent just for a moment. Pause.
Yeah, I like it when you mention about being practiced and the mind wanders. So in sitting
Hmm.
meditation, that where the practice is, the mind wanders and you bring it back. The mind wanders
Yes.
and you bring it back. So that's exactly what the practice is. And
Yeah.
I love to share this with my students. And I
Hmm.
say, it's always like you having a puppy, right?
Hmm.
And you're going to train the puppy and you're going to get
Yeah.
the puppy come, sit, and stay. Come,
Yeah.
sit, and stay.
It's
And
safe.
that's that mindfulness practice.
Oh, I love that. I love that example because I love puppies. But
Yeah, it's
but
easily
yeah,
resonated, right? Yeah.
yeah. Getting the puppy to stay longer is a great metaphor to use
Yeah,
for
because the puppy wanders all the time, right? It's so
yes,
hard
yes,
to
yes.
come and sit and
I'm
stay.
That's
Oh,
great. And
that's
it allows you to take that pause you need to, to get your mind back to not like we're talking about meditation, but it also is the exact thing for mindfulness, right?
mm,
Our mind will start emotionally wandering,
mm,
right?
mm,
And we have to bring it back to that pause in a meeting or in a high pressure situation to be able to really um, make an impact that we want. So
mm.
wonderful metaphors. Thank you for sharing
Thank
those.
you for
Love that.
that. Thank you for that. Coming back, like these practices aren't about getting right all the time. I just wanted to share that. Um, we're just
Mhm.
practicing, and to me, mindfulness is building a relationship with ourselves. Really, introspection, like you say, awareness,
Absolutely.
knowing what
Yes.
we are at this current state before we respond, right? So,
Mhm.
what does a realistic practice of mindful leadership look like over for maybe a week, especially for busy leaders? How do you, yeah, perhaps
Yeah.
share something?
The, I think it looks like small, simple steps,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Like we were talking about, you know, how the mind wanders, right? We have to be able to take small, simple steps along the way during
mm,
the week. Let's say we're starting our week, right? And we're practicing.
mm,
Um, we need to be able to say, okay, oh, my mind wandering, I need to bring it back to a pause, right? And then maybe 10 minutes later, the same thing could happen. Again, oh,
mm,
wait, I need to take time to rebalance myself emotionally, right?
mm,
And then maybe yeah, an hour later, you're sitting there trying to work on something with someone, and all of a sudden you're like, "Wait, this is a value I think is important here to insert." So you take time to insert that,
mm,
make that your values align with that person. So I think it's a step by step learning developmental process that takes time,
mm.
and I think it goes back to awareness.
Yeah, that's really
You,
beautiful, right?
you have to be aware of, I want to be mindful today. How am I going to set myself up to be mindful?
Mm-hmm.
And how will I keep that puppy here?
Yeah,
Right? How will I get that puppy to stay? And
exactly.
that's a
That's
powerful tool.
That's
Yeah.
really beautiful. And now that you mention, I remember when I started my practice,
Uh-huh.
I had this phone alarm that rings
Uh-huh.
every hour.
Oh,
So
wow.
every hour, I pause when it rings. So it's like it gets into the automatic thing, right?
Uh-huh.
When I
I
first
love it.
practiced so many years ago. Now that you mention, and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
how can we share this to audience? So I thought, yeah, this is my personal practice. I set an
Uh-huh.
alarm every hour just to be
Love
mindful.
that. I love doing that. I think a physical way to remind yourself as well as mentally remind yourself are both two very important ways and things you can do to help yourself remember how that mindfulness is something that you're working on and developing, and it will happen
Mm-hmm.
with more practice, right?
Mm,
And so that is a way of continuing to practice it. So I
that's so
love
beautiful. Yeah.
that setting a timer as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Over time, let's say over time, when leaders consistently engage with these six practices,
Mhm.
what do you see the shifts are? What would they notice, right? Not just in performance, but maybe
Mhm.
who they are or they have become. How do you feel that? What do you see the shift?
I what I have seen with my clients and other leaders
Mm,
is that it's not this big, I'm aware of this now,
mm,
right?
mm,
It's small little steps along the way that you go, oh wait, it only took me, 3 minutes to come back this time, right? And remember to pause. Or it's something internal
mm,
inside that you see slowly starting to change, and your mind starts to shift. It's the
mm,
neuroplasticity of neuroscience that we're getting into now, that it's, the developmental process as you practice something changes the neuroplasticity in your brain, and you slow it down. And
mm,
like you said, that chart that you're
mm,
on
mm,
becomes, the waves become smaller,
mm,
and you become more grounded as a leader. You um, are clearer in your thinking. You take more moments to pause.
mm,
But one of the other things that I would add to this is, even though it's internal, it's also external, because you are mirroring out behavior to other people that you're working with, and that shapes them as well. So you have the internal part for yourself, where you're in the developmental process of learning how to be more mindful, but you also have the external part where you are also teaching people around you
mm.
how to be more mindful.
Thank you.
And they also have more trust, respect, you know, and cohesion and collaboration as a team. So I think you have the inner pause, you have that external piece that's important. And as the developmental process works, it all comes together, and you notice small little pieces along the way, right?
Yeah, this is so important because I do want to set an expectation for the audience that mindfulness is noticing little things that you mentioned, not like
Mhm.
a big change in behavior or a big change that people might expect. That's one
Yes,
reason I
yes.
wanted you to share this. And it's so true as you were sharing this, I can feel that these practices really support that inner pause, especially when you
Yes.
mentioned about the word choice that you use, mirroring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's a reflection of ourselves, right?
It's a
Right. So
complete,
you're
yes.
mirroring that behavior, that trust, that calmness, that presence. And I feel like in my personal life, when I am less neurotic, my kids are less neurotic.
I love that.
You
That's a
know,
great.
it's so important, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. For
you
me,
see that mirroring through parenting, obviously.
yeah,
That's
I
great.
see that in
Yeah,
parenting,
awesome.
and
Awesome.
yeah, I would really like to stress that mirroring, it's
Yeah,
so important for leaders. It's not a big
awesome.
change, but like a small
Yeah,
awareness there, and it
yeah.
feels like less of doing more, but relating to each situation to ourselves and others differently. I think that is most important.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful,
Well,
wonderful. A
wow.
wonderful conversation
Thank
with
you
you,
so
Annie. Once
much.
again, thank you. I appreciate it.
Wow.
Should we do your favorite closing? The
Yes, I
last one?
love that. So before we end, let's pause together again. Just taking a few deep breaths. Notice that there's really nothing to fix here, nothing to change, and just noticing what's present here. And allow that breath to take us. Hmm. Here, may whatever you are carrying with you be met with kindness, and may your leadership in work or in life be guided by presence. Thank you very much for sharing this space with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. I
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
both of you. Thank
All
you.
right.